Hello, and welcome to the first actual episode of the Boost Crew podcast, not some pilot interview that went on too long. I am your host, Alex Tucker. This is my co host, Corbin Roberts. Say hi, Corbin.
Hello. The pilot episode was a pilot because Tucker was lazy
It
and
was fairly
didn't do
good.
editing.
It turned out fairly good. I think it was good. Anyway, that's besides the point. So, basically,
This is a school project,
yeah,
so
this episode is a
no.
school project. So, for those who are actually watching this on YouTube, I'm sorry, but it's not going to be, uh, you know, swearing fest. And if I do swear, I'm going to have to bleep it out because. Oh wait, uh.
All right, get the bleep.
Anyway,
And now you will hear
yeah.
the birds in the background, so please ignore that.
So, Corbin, how's your day been?
No, it's been good. I lived another day.
You
I'm
lived
pretty sure
another day.
2020. That's the best we can ask for.
I
Um,
did you hear about the vaccine that's coming out soon?
yeah, I did. I did hear about the vaccine, but I also heard about the man-child that is Trump and that whole thing. So
Yeah, we don't.
can't talk
uh,
about that in this one. We'll talk about it in another one.
uh,
Um,
all right, so
when the hell do you look at it?
yeah, basically this is gonna be a podcast to reflect on Catcher in the Rye and the various themes, aka that one overall theme of growing up, and our attempts to answer the question of when do we grow up and how do we know when we have grown up.
Right. Um,
And so
well, what do you think growing up means?
I think growing up is gaining more knowledge, and I'm going to repeat this statement very more times in other interviews. Future Alex put in editor's note. But yeah, I think it's just gaining knowledge and constantly growing, and that's why we never grow up, because knowledge is infinite, and unless you're a cosmic being like Will Smith, then not Will Smith. Well, I mean,
No,
technically Will Smith.
I don't know. I feel like Robin Williams was
Yeah,
more of a genie.
yeah. Robin Williams was better. Ooh, sorry, Will. But and I don't think we ever know if we've grown up unless we gain infinite knowledge. And on that topic, I guess we never grow up, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
I could implement this into my own life because my definition of growing up used to be different. It used to be the standard little kid. Oh, I'm an adult and I do adult things
Adulty things.
like pay bills, go to work, uh, drink booze, um,
Um,
and it was my definition used to be, yeah, I'm more responsible and now and stuff. And now it's, yeah, I don't think you ever grow up. And there are
yeah.
times where
That.
you, oh sorry,
No. Continue on. Continue on.
I mean, and growing up could also be, you know, implementing like maturity, like growing more mature. And there are times when I have felt like, yeah, I'm grown up. Um, I mean, I can't really say. I mean, if we that I have much experience because maturity happens different for people. Sometimes your brain decides to go, "Hey, you're sad now," and you're like, and you just gotta kind of accept it. But then there are others like they mature faster because of a tragic event, which you'll hear about later on. And yeah,
Yeah.
what
Um,
about you, Corbin? I'm sorry, I get interrupted you.
yeah. I I agree very heavily with that statement, but I also think in order to be grown, um, or at least a bit more grown up, because we're never fully we're never fully grown up. There are still little bits and pieces of our childhood in us.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's just the understanding that all things have an end at one point or another. Like, I think that's the closest you can get to being matured while you're gaining your knowledge, while you're gaining your wisdom. Um,
Memento mori.
uh, you understanding the very basic concept of everything as an end, right? Nothing is infinite.
Yeah.
Is just kind of like the basis of that. If you want to try and gain as much knowledge in your life, uh, I think that's your number one basis.
Yeah.
But for the most part, yeah, I totally agree. Growing up is not something that truly happens. You are growing up is the end result of your childhood,
Yeah.
and then you will still grow off of your adulthood and up until your senior years until you're in. So I think growing up um, really is just the gaining of knowledge. So
And
go off
actually,
of that.
if we do go off that, you could say that growing up is when you die. You fully grow up when you're at
When
your
you, yeah,
last few
when
minutes of life and you're just like, huh. And
I think
that,
I lived a good life. Yeah,
yeah, and you can reflect on everything you did and be like, oh, I regret this or I don't regret this. And
I think this was good. I
yeah,
think at that point, once you are able to reflect on your full life, you'll be set.
yep.
So, um,
I think that's enough
what
of,
else
I
do we
think
need to?
that's enough of a intro. We're gonna go into the interviews and we ask five other people to give their views on growing up and stuff. Um, and only one of those interviews was someone awake for. So most of them is just me
Um,
talking at people I know.
yeah,
And
and then on top of that, we don't talk about that.
yeah,
The one that I was awake for um,
became the pilot
became the
episode.
pilot podcast.
It became the
So,
pilot episode.
um, yeah, it went from a quick 15-minute interview to a 50-minute podcast. So,
Yay. Um, so, this is Mr. Gellick. He is a teacher at Mandalay Middle School. Say hi, Gellick.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, it's nice to meet you. Who are you, Corbin?
He's a friend.
I'm a friend of Tucker's working on this project. So
He
Awesome.
he is the co-host of the Booze Crew podcast. We're calling it that because of the fact that our motif. This is Catcher in the Rye. We have to do another video, and on a motif, and we chose alcohol, and so we thought Booze Crew, they rhyme. Anyway,
Great.
I'm sorry. Uh,
No, all good, all good.
all right. So, we're just gonna ask you a couple questions in Dan. Yeah, that's basically it. We've done the. I've done this at least uh, 3 other times. Someone was sleeping. Um,
we don't talk about that.
um.
First policy. We don't talk about that.
Anyway.
I've got my pillow ready to go when I need a nap, so I think we'll be okay.
Anyway. So basically, the common theme around these questions is growing up and your experience. And so the first one is, when did you first think, even for just the moment, that you were quote unquote grown up?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a hard statement because I feel like every year around my birthday, I would think that I was all grown up, And then the next year I'd look back and think, oh man, what an idiot I was. Now I'm all grown up. And even now, when I look back at like my 21st birthday, it's like I was still not fully grown up despite being, legally an adult. So that's a difficult question. The first time that I thought, even for just a moment, that I was all grown up with any sense of authenticity was definitely in college, probably when I turned, yeah, I guess 21's a good age, 20 maybe, 22. Before then, I mean, you could go back to like age 10 and I was like, oh man, I'm an adult now. Then age 11,
Yeah.
very cyclical.
I don't think 21st birthday is a very good birthday to reflect on for most people.
Yeah.
So that's actually a new one.
I don't know what you're talking about. So honestly, my birthday, my 21st birthday landed on a Sunday.
Oh.
So there were not as many festivities as you might be thinking of on that day. After the day, sure, I had fun with friends, but besides that, no.
All right. What would you say it means to grow up?
That's a difficult question. I think a way to look at it, part of growing up is becoming independent and being able to not only take care of yourself, but also think for yourself. I think that age is difficult for some to get to. Um, I think those two elements are huge for growing up. I think something that I'm always reminded of too are like the stages of Santa Claus, because like first stage of life is believing in Santa Claus. The second stage of life is not believing in Santa Claus, and it's the third stage where you become Santa Claus that you fully grow up and kind of take on a different role in the lives of the people around you. That's not the clearest answer, I guess.
It makes sense. You transition from the basic role of believing or looking up to superiors to kind of ignoring your superiors, and then you eventually, in a way, you become your superior and you become a superior to others.
I am the captain now.
Yes. I don't think that it's about ignoring superiors though. I think it's about getting to the same level as or acknowledging equity with superiors, because there comes a day where you'll realize that your dad, as silly as it is, this came to me from a college humor video from like the late 2000s. When you're a kid, you look at your dad as a superhero who he can do anything.
I've seen
And there comes a day later, yeah. There comes a day later in your adulthood, like after you've looked up to and idolized your dad, after you've rebelled against your dad and hated your dad, there comes a day where you realize that your dad is just like you. He's just a guy doing his best every day. He just has a lot more experience than you do at it, right? So I don't think it's necessarily about defying or not trusting superiors, but starting to understand the roles that your superiors have and understanding your place in that set of roles. And as you grow, you do step onto that evil footing, that same plane as those what were then superiors.
Yeah.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but when you said the become Santa Claus thing, my mind immediately went to the Santa Claus movie.
Oh no.
Great. Good
I'm
talk.
sorry. It's just
Not again. We've already had 3 of those movies.
I was about to say they made 2 more of them after the first one.
I was gonna say, what do you mean not again? Is this a theme in your podcast so far?
No. Well,
No.
Making my job as editor in the future hard. Yes.
Yes, that is our theme. It got to the point in our primary recording, which is the introduction, parts of the body, and ending. We have to redo that because I just made it too hard for him to edit.
I think I contributed to that. Anyway, so when did you start to consistently feel like you were grown up?
I would say that I started to feel consistently like a grown up in my second or third year of teaching. Understand that at that time, as a young teacher, I was still living with my folks, so that fully realized independence hadn't come my way quite yet. But by the time I had finished my second year of teaching, I was working independently as the only instrumental music teacher at my school. I was thinking for myself in terms of what I was wanting to teach, how we were going to skin the cats of what learning music is, you know, how we were going to tackle this lesson, that lesson, this assignment. Um, this year especially, I definitely feel like an adult. I have my own living space. I'm able to afford it on a teacher salary, which is only because of the kindness of my landlord, who is losing money on this. Teachers are not at all supported as well as they should be.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
what
it was definitely in the earlier to mid 20s that I felt like I kind of had my poop in a group and could call myself an adult.
interesting.
Is there any advice you would give for anyone growing up right now?
It gets better. It gets better. I think that it's important to acknowledge that at every stage of your life, you're going to experience hardship and adversity. And the successful adults are the adults that learn how to handle that challenge and overcome that challenge. And honestly, the best adults in your life are the adults who have not only overcome those situations, but have learned from and reflected on those situations. I sit here before you only being a product of the mistakes that I've made and the lessons that I've learned along the way. So to all of the young people, to all of the youths out there who are still growing, I mean, to all of the college students who are still growing, keep learning, keep acknowledging that things suck, and learn how you can make things suck less moving forward.
All right. Tucker, do you have any?
Yeah, actually. All right, one, Corbin, you stole my last question, and two, I don't. Your response, your people. Well, you're gonna make mistakes. For you, I'm just gonna say this. I don't think Honey Bunches was a mistake. And three is the actual question. Uh, what does being grown up mean? Oh wait, we already asked.
We already asked that.
Hacking swear word. Um, in your opinion, how long does it take a person to grow up?
I think that depends on what your definition of grown up is, and I think it depends on the person you're talking about. Some people experience these kinds of hardships and challenges at a younger age. Someone that comes to mind is a friend of mine from high school who, as a sophomore, her father passed away. And at the passing of her father, she grew to become a different person because her entire life perspective had shifted from, oh man, I have this test coming up that I need to study for. Oh no, I bombed this quiz. Oh, to life is something that is very temporary and very necessary to appreciate in the moment because it is fleeting and we don't know when that time will come. Um, so, I mean, for most people, I think that it's probably in the late teens, early 20s where you can really start to grow up and really be recognized as an adult. Definitely that recognized as adult more in the 20 side because again, that's where I was. Like I thought even when I was 19 and 20, I'm definitely more of an old soul, mature for my age. But I wouldn't fully recognize myself as an adult. I wasn't fending for myself financially. I wasn't fending for myself in a few aspects, but now I am. Um, I mean, that's still relatively incorrect because my folks are lovingly supportive, but that's besides the point. I think a general framework would be late teens, early 20s,
Yeah.
but I think that there are some people who have experienced things that we simply couldn't experience until it happens to us, and they've grown much faster than others around us.
All right.
Yeah, that's yeah. All right. Well, I don't have any more questions. Corbin, do you?
I do not, as I'm pretty sure we have gone through all the bulletin points that we have to go through.
Well, actually, I do have one more.
Yes.
Um, so going back to the question of when did you start consistently feel like you had grown up? What what events took place that made you feel like you were consistently grown up?
Again, a big one recently was having my own living space. I think that's one, especially in the generational gap between myself, a very late term millennial,
Yeah.
and the generation that came before. There used to be, and to a large degree, there still is a big stigma around living with your folks, not being independent with your living space. Um, there was a time where you could easily find either an apartment to rent or a condo to own, or a house to own. Even, you could handle those financially with lesser earning jobs than what we are currently experiencing. I mean, part of it is the housing fiasco that Colorado has. Part of it, a large part of it, in my experience at least, is the wage gap with younger teachers not being able to afford independent housing, independent living spaces. So for me, a large part of a huge event was just this April getting my own living space, because I was able to overcome that stigma, even though I'd acknowledged it's silly. You should live with your folks when you can, because it's you need to be able to save up. I have a lot of money saved up because I was able to save thousands of dollars on rent living at home. I think that another event that helped push me to really recognize myself as an adult was starting to understand the little boring things, like how to file your own taxes and not just go to the same person your parents go to. Being able to talk about insurance policies. Now, I don't know every single thing with any of those categories, but I can at least talk a little bit about what's good about having a small deductible, or I can talk about, you know, those kind of adult concepts, I guess, being
Yeah.
able to understand them and acknowledge that I knew what I was talking about to even a small degree.
Yeah. And so those interviews, not best of quality on my mic, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah, I would agree. I went through, I listened to all of them at the
Totally.
time of this recording. Um, anyways,
Uh, so now this is the part where we're done with everybody's POV on growing up for the moment, and we gotta apply our knowledge, our big brained knowledge from all perspectives onto the novel Catcher in the Rye, or as I mistakenly called it, Witcher in the Rye at one point. Don't
yep.
don't ask how I mistake that. It's very weird. Um,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, he, for some reason, he came up with the Witcher in the Rye. But
that's
now
an
all
that's
I'm
an
thinking
entirely different podcast. All right.
is now it's just The Witcher 4 is going to be The Witcher and a
Ugh.
bottle of rye.
Anyway,
Um,
so so we have some basic questions that have been given to us by the chart that we have been using because it is a very helpful chart.
and it's very helpful. I totally have it open.
And one of these questions is, how does the Catcher in the Rye address the concept of growing up? And then it says, like, analyze Holden's experience. Corbin, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, I can very much so answer. Um, Holden in The Catcher in the Rye goes almost out of his way to be an adult and to be grown up in quotations because one, he's got a drinking problem, and but it's not to the point of
Constant alcohol.
it's not he's not trying to become a drunken bum. He's almost kind of doing it as if he were better, more above others of his age group. He always looks down upon everyone else in his age. Always talks like how an adult would.
He's too fancy for our
Oh, you're so fancy.
He's too good for our party beer.
Yeah. And you have to look at that, and then just by looking at that in itself shows Holden is doing what he can to be grown up, even though calling out immaturity, which is something he does do a lot, is immaturity in itself.
Almost constantly, actually.
Almost constantly. And that in itself is immature.
And, alright, so...
Right?
Yeah, the next question is, according to the text, is growing up painful, joyful, simple, or complex? According to the text, I would say, from Holden's perspective, I think he views growing up as more of a simple thing of, oh, I just gotta stop being phony, and I gotta act all mature, and I gotta drink the big boy drinks of Coke and rum and Bacardi. But it's like,
Delicious. Me or Alex has ever drank, but we're assuming Coke and rum is delicious. So.
yeah. And
Um,
well, I mean, I'm just going off that basis because I like Coke. I have a serious
yeah.
Coca-Cola problem.
Um,
But that's an entirely different discussion. But yeah, and in that way, he tries to view it as simple, but by doing all these adult things too soon, at his age, I think he's only like 2 years older than us.
right.
It, in a way, is kind of making his life growing up a little bit more complex because he doesn't have, like, he's failing his school. He basically won't have a basic education at this point in our reading of the book. And, he's just not going to see, he's probably still going to be a stuck up piece of bleep that we hear. Well, not here, that we see in the book. If we're being honest, he's kind of a moron.
He's kind of a moron, but that also kind of ties into uh, Holden. Holden growing up was joyful until the loss. I mean, for the most part, it was joyful. Of course, he had an alcoholic father.
Yeah.
But it was mostly joyful. He hung out. He had tons of friends. But when his younger brother died, I think at that point it just kind of switched to, okay, now I have to be an adult constantly. I have to try and be an adult. School, phonies,
Yeah.
you phony. That's
Oh.
fake news. This sounds a lot like a certain.
We're avoiding politics in this one. We'll do it the
What a
next
shame.
podcast.
If you know who I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. It's fake news, guys. The liberals are after
All right,
us.
that's it. Anyway, next question.
Okay.
We're just gonna do one more essential question in the novel before we reach a conclusion about our final verdict on the answer.
All right.
And then, what lesson about growing up does The Catcher in the Rye teach us? I'm gonna answer this one again. I'm sorry, Corbin.
Take
I
it down.
don't want to risk the you know what I'm talking about.
The jokes, yeah.
Basically, what can this book teach us about growing up? It can teach us that growing up too fast or trying to grow up isn't going to solve anything. If you're, and I know this is going to hit a lot of people in the wrong way, and I don't mean it to, but say like, unless it's absolutely necessary, say like a relative or a friend, they die, and unless, they were providing you with financial support and they got to hecking. What was I gonna say? Yeah, and they were a big part of your family, and now you have to try and fill in that role. Then don't let that make your childhood any different from a normal childhood. And I think that you should just try and not grow up too fast, because that would be and I think that's what the book is trying to show, is what happens when you grow up or try to grow up unnecessarily fast. Now, I know in the Gallic interview, he told us about his friend who, had to deal with the loss of her father. And that, I can see that. But in a way, I don't think growing up too fast is a good coping mechanism. And Holden is a prime example of what happens when that happens.
Right.
Oh, psychoanalyzing Holden. Is that allowed? It is? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's giving us the nod. Okay.
Uh,
Um,
what? All right. And now we got to reach a conclusion. Our final verdict, the jury has decided, the Senate has put into a vote on when do we grow up and how do we know we have? Does the jury want to give their opinion?
the jury finds stupid things are stupid. Growing up is something that is to be treasured. And overall, we didn't get enough coffee this morning, so we're out of ideas.
All right, then I will go to a decision. Uh, I think that, you know, when the question of when do we grow up, I still stick by the answer of never. Because if we're going off my example of growing up as being more mature and, taking responsibility for shit, it never, you never grow up. Because no one is truly 100% mature. Sure, you might be a humorless sack of crap, but, like, that doesn't make you mature. If anything, that makes you less mature than Jim Carrey. Ooh, got him.
Oh,
But,
dang.
and how do we know when we have grown up? There is no answer to that if we're going off my answer. Because, you know,
And I do very much so think that is true. I think also being a grown up, once you are an adult, and I'm assuming there's a good portion of you who are adults, it's being able to handle a situation is the real key in being smart about it.
yeah,
Not drinking every day, not doing stupid stuff, right?
yeah.
So I think that is the main key of all of this.
All right, well, folks, thank you for listening. Kohara, please don't completely hate on this podcast. And, yeah, be a good person and don't grow up.
Life.
Don't grow up too fast.
Yeah.
This episode of The Booze Crew has officially ended. Thank you.
Have a nice day, brother.